Hello and welcome to the Biological Anthropology lecture series. I'm Dr. Richard Jonathan O. Tadurin. Here we explore what it means to be human, biologically, evolutionarily, and behaviorally. Let's begin our journey into the science of humanity. Welcome to Module 9, the genus Homo. Here, we trace the emergence of early Homo, the evolution of Homo erectus, and surprising new discoveries in our lineage. This is the point in the story where our ancestors begin to look and behave in ways that feel recognizably human, yet still carry echoes of the earlier Australopithecines. In this section, we focus on Homo erectus, its global dispersal, biological innovations, and technological advances. If Homo habilis represents the experimental first steps of our genus, Homo erectus is where those experiments become a coherent, successful strategy. Let's revisit what made Homo erectus such a turning point in our evolutionary story. When this species appears around 1.8 million years ago, it brings with it a suite of anatomical and behavioral innovations that are far more unified and forward-leaning than anything we've seen in earlier hominins. If Homo habilis was still tied to its Australopithecine past, Homo erectus looks firmly committed to a new way of being human. Let's look at the body first. One of the most striking features of Homo erectus is its modern limb proportions. Long legs paired with relatively shorter arms. Think about what that means for locomotion. Longer legs allow for longer strides, better endurance, and more efficient walking over long distances. This isn't just about moving from one feeding patch to another. It's about having the capacity to explore entirely new regions. You might wonder why this matters. Walking efficiently opens the door to a broader home range, and for Homo erectus, it ultimately enabled the first major dispersal of hominins out of Africa. Body size also increases dramatically. Compared to Homo habilis, Homo erectus individuals were 33 to 37% taller. Larger bodies combined with more robust bones suggest a species well adapted to life on the ground, capable of navigating open habitats, facing new predators, and traveling widely. Alongside these changes, brain size expands to roughly 900 to 1,000 cubic centimeters, a notable jump that points to more complex planning and social organization. Let's revisit where Homo erectus begins its story. Around 1.8 million years ago in Africa, we see a hominin with a body built for endurance, a brain capable of broader planning, and tools that allowed new ways of interacting with the environment. These changes weren't just interesting evolutionary tweaks, they were the key ingredients that enabled something no earlier hominin had ever done: expand beyond Africa and establish a truly global presence. Let's look at the earliest evidence of this expansion. In the site of Dmanisi in Georgia, fossils dating to about 1.8 million years ago show small-bodied, small-brained individuals who nonetheless clearly belong to the Homo erectus lineage. You might wonder why Dmanisi is such a big deal. Think about this. It tells us that the first hominins to leave Africa didn't need massive brains or advanced tools. Instead, they relied on flexibility, endurance, and cooperation, traits that had already begun to define the genus Homo. The Dmanisi fossils capture a moment when hominins were testing new ecological ground, adapting quickly, and proving that survival was possible far from their original landscapes. From there, the presence of Homo erectus spreads across Asia. In Indonesia, the classic finds from Java reveal individuals who lived roughly between 1.6 million and 1 million years ago. These fossils show the same long-legged, ground-adapted body plan that made long-distance travel feasible. The geographic span of Homo erectus, from Africa to Southeast Asia, is enormous. No other hominin before them comes close to this range, and it signals a profound shift in how our ancestors inhabited the world. Let's look at East Asia as well. In China, sites like Acheulean preserve fossils traditionally assigned to Homo erectus, dating from around 780,000 years ago. These remains give us a glimpse into populations that lived in colder climates, suggesting that adaptations in clothing, shelter, or fire use were part of their survival toolkit. This ability to persist in varied environments, from tropical forests to temperate zones, highlights a behavioral flexibility that would become a hallmark of later humans. You might wonder how Homo erectus managed such an expansive range with the technologies available at the time. The answer lies not in specialized tools or complex shelters, but in the combination of physical endurance, dietary versatility, and the social dynamics required for survival across unfamiliar landscapes. The efficient, modern-like gait of Homo erectus made long-distance travel less costly, while their Acheulean tools allowed more effective processing of plant and animal foods. Together, these traits created a species capable of moving into new territories and staying there. As we trace their path from Africa to Eurasia, Homo erectus emerges as a pioneer species, expanding the ecological possibilities for hominins and redefining what it meant to be mobile, adaptable, and resilient. Their dispersal sets the stage for every major human migration that follows. Let's revisit the cultural landscape we left behind with Homo habilis. Oldowan flakes opened new dietary possibilities, but they were still simple tools, more opportunistic than planned. When Homo erectus appears, we see something different. We see a lineage that begins to invest in technology, in skill, and in routines that require teaching, practice, and shared knowledge. Culture, in its earliest recognizable form, starts to deepen. Let's look at the Acheulean hand axe, the technological hallmark of this species. At first glance, it's just a teardrop-shaped stone, but think about what it takes to produce one. You need to visualize the final shape, choose the right raw material, and strike the stone repeatedly with controlled force. That mental template, the idea of a tool before it exists physically, is a major cognitive step. You might wonder why this matters. It matters because it tells us that Homo erectus wasn't just reacting to its environment, it was shaping it with intentionality. The Acheulean tradition lasts more than 1,000,000 years, spreading across Africa, Europe, and parts of Asia, suggesting that knowledge was being passed down through generations, not reinvented each time. Technology doesn't exist in isolation. Acheulean tools allowed Homo erectus to access a wider range of foods. Butchering carcasses, processing tough plant materials, and perhaps even woodworking became easier and more efficient. With higher quality diets, especially those rich in meat and marrow, Homo erectus could support larger bodies and larger brains. Culture and biology begin to reinforce each other. Let's look at fire next, because it's one of the most transformative developments associated with Homo erectus. Evidence from sites like Kubifora and Wonderwork Cave suggests that these hominins may have used or even controlled fire. Imagine the shift this brings. Cooked food is softer, easier to digest, and more energy-rich. It breaks down toxins, makes tubers edible, and dramatically reduces chewing time. If you've ever compared eating a raw root vegetable to a cooked one, you already know how profound that difference is. Fire also extends daylight hours, offering a warm, illuminated gathering place where social interactions could unfold. You might wonder whether fire shaped social life as well. It almost certainly did. A controlled flame is a magnet. It keeps predators away, it draws group members together, and it provides a safe space for food sharing and communication. These evening gatherings may have strengthened bonds and created moments of learning, imitation, and cooperation. We don't have direct evidence of speech, but the social dynamics required for long-distance travel, coordinated scavenging, and fire-tending hint at increasingly complex communication. Let's also consider landscape use. Acheulean sites often contain repeated accumulations of tools and bones, suggesting that Homo erectus returned to specific places over time. These were not permanent settlements, but they were meaningful spaces. Places where the group processed food, napped tools, and possibly rested. This pattern tells us that Homo erectus was beginning to map its world mentally, tracking not only resources, but the locations where cooperation and activity unfolded. So when we think about culture and technology in Homo erectus, we're really tracing the early foundations of what later becomes fully human behavior. It's a story of intention, learning, sociality, and innovation, a set of cultural sparks that would eventually ignite the extraordinary adaptability of our species. First, let's revisit the major themes we explored in this section. With Homo erectus, we see a hominin that doesn't just adapt to its environment, it expands its world. Longer legs, larger bodies, and more efficient walking opened the door to new landscapes. Acheulean tools and possible fire use transformed diets and daily activities. And the dispersal across Africa, Eurasia, and Southeast Asia shows us a species willing to push into unfamiliar territory and thrive there. Think about this. Before Homo erectus, hominin evolution was a largely African story. After Homo erectus, human evolution becomes a global one. You might wonder why this matters for understanding later species. It matters because the habits, technologies, and social strategies that Homo erectus developed, endurance mobility, cooperative foraging, flexible diet, and shared knowledge, created the ecological and cultural platform on which later members of our genus would build. Let's look again at the pattern. Whenever Homo erectus enters a new environment, it adjusts. It modifies tools, navigates different climates, and persists through shifting ecosystems. This adaptability is not accidental. It reflects a lineage learning to rely on planning, cooperation, and innovation. Now this part is important. These are precisely the qualities that will later define Homo sapiens. So, as we close this section, remember Homo erectus not only as a traveler, but as a trailblazer, one that expanded the boundaries of what hominins could do, how far they could go, and how they could live. In the next section, we'll see that the story of our genus becomes even more surprising. Thank you for joining this lecture. I'm Dr. Richard Jonathan O. Tadurin. I hope this session deepened your understanding of biological anthropology. Keep exploring what it means to be human. See you soon.